Good evening, and thank you for joining us. I'm Denise Vigna with Howard Center, and we're going to go ahead and get started in the spirit of starting on time. We want to welcome you to our third annual speaker event in recognition and celebration of World Mental Health Day, which was this past Monday and shared this year with Indigenous Peoples Day. This year's theme is to make mental health and well-being a global priority for all. Tonight, we are offering Recognizing and Recovering from Burnout in the spirit of shining a light on mental health with a focus on taking care of ourselves and one another. At Howard Center, despite the many challenges of the past few years, our committed and dedicated staff continue to serve our community, supporting people with mental health, substance use, and developmental services. Shortly, we'll turn to welcome Ferene Meyer, whose storytelling is sure to inspire. But before we get started, we want to take the opportunity to thank our sponsors who helped to underwrite our event. First, our champion sponsor, North Country, your community credit union. Thank you so much for your support and your very nice message. And thank you to all of our sponsors, including our advocate sponsor, PCC, Physicians Computer Company. Thank you. We are so fortunate to have your support and the support of the many other businesses you see on the screen. We could not do this without all of them. We also want to acknowledge two of our longtime donors who are committed to supporting mental health in our community. They are generously matching new donor gifts and renewing donors who choose to increase their gift in recognition of World Mental Health Day. We're thrilled to have their support, some of which will go to our First Call for Chittenden County program and to our other crisis stabilization programs. If you'd like to join them and make a contribution, please visit us at howardcenter.org. You'll also find many mental health resources there. And now just a few housekeeping notes. For tonight's webinar, you won't have access to your audio, video, and chat functions, but we will offer a Q&A session immediately following each presentation. And you may ask questions throughout the webinar using the Q&A function on your Zoom toolbar. It's also very fine to ask your questions anonymously. We'll be recording tonight's webinar and we'll make it available at howardcenter.org in the coming days. We also want to acknowledge and thank our American Sign Language interpreters, who you'll see on the screen, Crystal Heyer and Samantha Kennedy. Thank you very much for being with us. If you have any special requests for them, please send them through the Q&A and they'll be as accommodating as possible. We're also really pleased to be able to offer CEUs for any professionals here who need them. After the event, you may email Rob Vale at rvale@howardcenter.org to request your certificate. We do have one that's pending, and so we will hold certificates until we get that final approval, which we expect any day. Let's see, and now, once again, it's really my pleasure, and we're so fortunate to have Dr. Jude Smith-Rakelli with us to moderate this evening's conversation. Jude is the CEO and co-founder of Abundant Sun, an international consulting firm, and she's a social entrepreneur, an academic, artist, and a wonderful public speaker and friend. Jude has lived and worked internationally, and tonight she's joining us from the UK, where it's quite late. She's charismatic, dynamic, and an insightful leader, and she's been leading Howard Center's diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives since 2015. We're thrilled to have her back with us again. Hello, Jude, welcome. Jude's going to return in just a little bit to facilitate the Q&A after Ferene gives her talk.
Thank you, Denise.
And now it's my privilege to introduce our first speaker and storyteller, Ferene Meyer. Ferene is CEO and founder of All Heart Inspirations, which creates heart-centered spaces through workshops, community engagements, culinary cuisine, and much more. Ferene is living out loud, sharing her lived experiences as a Black Haitian woman in collaboration with schools, organizations, media, and all of us here tonight. She aspires to make a collective difference within her local Vermont community and beyond, one story at a time. Please join me in welcoming Ferene Meyer.
Hello, hello, hello. It is an absolute honor to be with y'all this evening. I want to just express dear gratitude to the Howard Center for creating this very much needed space that we need to discuss such a topic. And I reflect and think about if this level of intention brave, courageous space was created in a variety of different ways. Could we address this problem called burnout that our society is deeply drowning in? And I have been reflecting too on the word burnout, because what is that word? What does it mean? That is deeply shaped by who you are. Let's ask a teacher these days what it means to be burnt out, or asking someone in food and service industry. What about for that parent that's multitasking, working remote home and trying to figure out how to get smaller humans in and out of the house? Wow, their burnout might feel very different from other set narratives, occupations, lived experiences. So I want to name that, because we can't speak about burnout without being intentional and reflecting on how our particular identities and how our particular lived experiences is shaping who is getting burnt out, who does burnt out seem to happen to repeatedly, who burnout doesn't seem to be part of their daily narrative. And if we're not asking those questions to really explore and unpack this word, then I am saddened that I think we will stay in this cycle of burnout, really doing quite harm on our collective community. My daughter, Melody, she's 9 years old, and recently she's gotten into the movie Titanic. And I mean, for anyone who was part of that movie when it came out, for me being a child of the 80s, I saw it in the theater 3 times, right? I was like, there is something about this movie. And what does it mean from the moment they left port and people were anticipating this way of life, only to not make it to the final designation as they thought. And a friend of mine, her name is Chris. She is one of the owners of Hype Nutrition in Winooski. And they made a post that left me in deep reflection, and I want to name that with you, and you'll understand why I'm talking about the Titanic. Chris shared that no matter how deep and strong a sea is, the only way a sea can take out a vessel is if that water enters that vessel. If that water never enters that vessel, then that ship will continue to do what it's meant to do. And it had me reflecting, and it had me thinking about the Titanic. And it made me think about this concept called burnout. Because for me, when I reflect on that narrative, when I reflect on moments in my life where burnout literally left me in child pose on the ground, physically not even being able to get out of my bed because I was that overwhelmed with this thing we called life. I wish I would have listened sooner, paid attention more when my vessel, which is my Black body that I move through this world in, possibly got cracked, possibly got hit by something. In the movie Titanic, it was an iceberg. For us in this human narrative, the thing that might be hit in your vessel could be toxic relationships. The thing that might be hit in your vessel could be financial insecurity. The thing that might be hit in your vessel is not having the freedom to use said bathrooms or navigate spaces that are in alignment with your gender expression. I think about this as a human. And if you think about our physical bodies being vessels, what invites us to be able to float and exist beautifully on the water? Because that is our birthright. When I think about the fact that I am human, the fact that I try my best to be a good person, not perfect at it. You know, I'm doing this thing trying to raise these kids so that they can be productive, awesome humans in this world. You know, I used to work in higher ed and my focus was on, you know, and it's like you're doing all these things. You're trying to have alignment. You're trying to possibly do the things that are needed. But things keep taking jabs at you. You know, that person that overlooked you in that meeting and didn't acknowledge your idea, and then yet someone else says it of different identities, and somehow, oh my gosh, what an idea that person gave. That hits your vessel. When someone drops a last minute assignment and you have to pick up kids at 5 o'clock and they're like, you can't leave until you get this done. And you're like in conflict. Who do I choose, my family or this work? The work pays for me to take care of my family, but if I don't pick up said kid on time, that hits your vessel. And I have found myself, especially in light of the pandemic and the onset of it, are we all on a Titanic that if we don't start paying attention deeply and sincerely, that this is just all of us on a ship that's going down? Because when you thought about the Titanic, even the way the people got their housing assignments, who was at the bottom of the boat? That tended to be more of your, you know, lower class, not enough, like, and then as you moved up in the boat, right? And so when you look at this movie and even how the movie portrayed this boat going into the water when it initially got struck by that iceberg, you even see who gets sacrificed first. The people of color on the boat, people of lower socioeconomic status. You also saw who got prioritized on the boat. Let's get all the women and children out. Like, it's just, and I'm asking myself, man, am I part of a narrative here in this life where we all might be on this boat and it is going down? And unless we severely flip things inside and out, dismantling systems, dismantling what does that look like? What does this mean for all of us? Because I am not okay. And I know I say that because I want to gift everyone who, when I say that, you're like, thank you, because I am not okay. How can one be okay with what is happening each time you wake up to do this thing called life? Whether it's what's happening locally in our community or what's happening globally, whether it's what's happening with policies around women's rights, what's happening with transphobia, what's happening with the lack of support we give particular groups that are having harm and trauma in their countries, but yet who do we pay attention to? I mean, it's just, how do we expect one to be able to just float on that water like I was talking about, when so many people are being tapped, flipped, turned upside down, and being asked to perform in a way that is just not sustainable? I mean, in theory, it's just not humane. So I reflect on this topic, recognizing and recovering from burnout. And it's a beautiful topic for us to reflect on as a collective. Because when I think about the word recognize, it's telling us to notice and feel. That's what it means to recognize. It's inviting us to reflect. It's inviting us to track and pay attention. And I am guilty of a human that once upon a time moved through this world with so much urgency. I don't know if I gifted myself the gift of what it means to be able to slow down, reflect, and feel. Take a moment and think about how often you're truly doing that for yourself. And so what I started noticing when I started having my personal journey with my mental health That year was 2017. I say that, and that was about 5 years ago. And I want to say that because I think too often folks would look at me and the narrative that I am now manifesting with my business, All Heart Inspirations, and they would look at my family, and they would possibly look at the way that I do life. But I need to stress that everything and how I move through this world now is because I allowed myself to not just hit rock bottoms, but have accountability over the rock bottoms that I was moving through. I took time to recognize, to notice and feel where there was no longer alignment with my mind, body, and spirit. Anyone who knows me knows that I love music. I often say I have a therapist and I call her music. And for me, what I love about music is that it often gives us words, melodies, beats to possibly what we're holding in ourselves. Sometimes, even with my partner, we've been together 17 years. And there are times where if we have a disagreement, it's easier for me to find a song to send him that says, I'm sorry, versus using my own words and taking ownership over, man, I'm sorry. So I love music. And for me, music was one of my ways of helping me recognize burnout, helping me notice and feel. So eventually I could commit to heal. And so a song that I want to share with you is called It's Quiet Uptown. Some folks might know it from the Hamilton soundtrack. And in this song, there is a particular 2 verses that when I allowed myself to actually listen to the song, get beyond, the amazing artists and celebrities that were in the play, get beyond what was the plot of Hamilton. But when I allowed myself to strip down the song and look at the words and invite myself to think, I wonder what Lin-Manuel meant by composing this song. But here is how this song is speaking to me in my current moment of life. And so there's a line that goes, there are moments that the words don't reach. There is suffering too terrible to name. I reflected on that. There are moments when the words won't reach and the suffering is too terrible to name. That song affirmed for me why there was so much silence and some of the struggling I was having around my mental health, my collective health. It is so hard sometimes when you reach the point of burnout. And let me throw out some other words, because if burnout is not the word that's like sinking with you, when I say burnout, I think mental distance. I think chronic stress. I think energy depletion. When I think about burnout, I'm using exhaustion vibes. I'm thinking about, man, why do I just see everything so negatively? I even had a fun moment with Alexa where I said, hey, Alexa, define burnout. And Alexa's talking right now. She heard me. But she defined it as a fire that is totally destructive of something. I want to emphasize that because we can play down what burnout is. For some of us, yeah, brush it off your shoulder, no big deal. But for others, because of, again, the identities that you hold, the lived experiences that you have, the systems that exist in this country that are set up to uplift some and literally fail others, burnout can be a choice of life or death. So yes, We got to get real and elevate the conversation of what it means to recognize and recover from burnout. Because I am sick and tired of seeing whether it's myself, whether it's my loved ones, people in my collective community. When I worked in higher education, the students that we were there to serve and hold, burnout is such a plague. It's so hard to put into words for those who have not experienced how deep it can be, which is why, again, I turn to music. And so when I reflect back to that song, "It's Quiet Uptown," another line from it said, "The moments when you're in so deep, it feels easier to just swim down." The moments when you're in so deep, it feels easier to just swim down. Anybody who has narratives with anxiety, depression, suicidal ideation, harm, I think you know the underlining of those two lines. It feels easier to just swim down. If you're swimming down, you're choosing to stop fighting. If you're swimming down, you're like, I just can't do this anymore. If you're choosing to just swim down, you're like, I think I'm okay with never having back what's at the top. I remember when I, again, really allowed myself to listen to the lyrics of that song. That was an awakening moment to me. Ferene, when have the moments been so deep, it felt easier to just swim down? It was hard being 100% honest with myself about that question. It's not easy sometimes facing narratives about yourself that you're not fully healed from. I often say we are covered with wounds and scars. Some of us, have healed from some of the things that have impacted us. And some of us are literally still moving through with wounds deeply opened, hoping that we're just not bleeding over people. And I would say that at one point in my life, and this was in particular in 2016, working in higher education, which unfortunately has a very toxic, capitalistic, unsustainable, using people at their expense culture. They're not all like that, but please don't tell me that my truth isn't my truth. And I know what it was like to exist in that kind of scene. And so I know what that kind of scene did to push me to a point of burnout, to push me to a place of mental distance from things that mattered to me. Pushed me to a point where I felt like there was chronic stress happening in my life. I don't know who can relate to Sunday anxiety when you know you got to go to work on Monday. I think about the summer going into 2016. It was April, and I was facilitating a training for my student leaders. And I was physically there at that training, but I know that my spirit was somewhere else. And I don't know if anyone can ever relate. You're like I'm sitting in this room with you, or like I'm at this dinner table, but your heart, your mind, your soul might be somewhere else. And so for me, I was there, we were doing our thing, we were welcoming our new orientation leader team to welcome the new class. And I remember doing everything that I could to be the vibrant, outgoing orientation director that comes with that position, being the face of the university, being the cheerleader of what it means to rally in new students, You got to get the team pumped up, remind them of how purposeful this work is. But I just remember inside, I hated all of it. I remember inside, I'm saying one thing, I'm preaching one thing to the choir, but in my heart of heart, I knew that this work just wasn't aligning with my soul the way that it used to. Anyone who knows me knows I am a first-generation student. I am proud. I am a proud daughter of Haitian immigrant parents, Ferene and Yolene, and everything that they did to sacrifice for me to get my pathway into schools and develop my academic, rigor, whatever it may be. But man, it came at a cost. It came at a cost trying to be like, I got to do everything just right. I'm the first in my family, right? Like, you're the first one in your family to like go to college. You got to do this just right. So you push yourself and you stay up late doing the work, and you wonder why you can't wrap your head around content and material that other people in your class seem to do so easily. But like you're the first gen student, like you got to get this right. Your family is depending on you to bring home this diploma. And that then weaves into the other parts of your narrative. It weaves into you needing to be perfect in the positions that you get involved in at school, and the roles that you hold, and what people want from you, and who people expect you to be. And it's like, oh my gosh, Ferene, like, you're the cheerleader. Like, this is what you do. Like, you're our people person. And then those patterns then become like deep, profound habits that are so hard to break. They influence the way that you exist in relationships. They influence how you pick your partners. They influence the way that you don't really hold yourself accountable to the boundaries that you need, but it's just easier to, adjust you rather than letting other people sit in their discomfort. But all of those things keep taking paper cuts at your soul. They keep, again, going back to that metaphor about us being vessels, being boats. Over time, it just keeps taking nicks at who you are. And then, you fast forward and you're like, wow, why am I having such challenging thoughts? And I'm so overwhelmed in my mid-30s about things that shouldn't feel this complicated. And I know why now. It's because since the minute I came into this world as a Black person, society has asked way too much of me. And I cry right now. And these tears are not, I got nothing to be ashamed about. Because I'm healing, baby. I'm healing. I'm telling myself it is not my deep responsibility to hold in your mind what you think of me, to hold in your mind what you expect of me, to hold in your mind how I should give my time and energy. And it's me doing this deep, profound healing as I, make my way beautifully into my, my 40s. But I wish it would have came sooner. I wish I could have recognized. I wish there were more moments where I could have noticed and felt and reflected on when situations, experiences were feeding this narrative of what it means to burn out our collective human society. And so I want us to deeply, again, think about burnout in a way that this is a life issue. This is not a game. I am one of millions of narratives that could express, share, and gift you with stories of how, whether it's in your relationships, whether it's in your work environments, man, I think about our children, even in their classrooms. I think about the pressure that we are putting on our youth, the grades, the testing, and all of that. And, you know, my 13-year-old daughter who questions everything is like, and what is that for? So I get said, you know, score on this thing, like, what does that, how does that define me? And I like tell her, it doesn't define you at all. You get to define who you are. As a storyteller, I try to empower folks to understand that we need to take ownership over our stories. We need to ensure that we don't have people outside of the community or outside of this particular narrative that we are trying to uplift and center. For us tonight, it's around burnout. So I don't want to talk to people who have never experienced burnout. You can't do anything to pour into this conversation in a way that is real and raw to get us to where we need to shift and be. And so I use stories. And when I was invited to do this talk, I was like, I'd love to talk about recovery regarding burnout, because if it wasn't for being a storyteller, if it wasn't for stories, if it wasn't for the moments in my life where I slowed myself down, I wouldn't have been able to like unpack all the different things that make up who we are as humans, and trying to figure out where in my trauma is still lingering with my soul, and how do those pieces influence present day moments. I was able to figure out what I just needed to let go versus what are things that I'm willing to keep doing the work. And it was those things that really then allowed myself, so that when I looked in the mirror, when I looked at Ferene Paris, I could say and believe to myself, I know that person. Because there was a wild in my life where, because of depression and anxiety, I feel I started to not recognize the human that was looking back at me in the mirror. She had my hair, you know, she had the lips my father has blessed me with, and the glow of my mom, but her eyes felt empty. My soul felt like it was missing. And I really didn't recognize it sooner. And for that, I'm thankful for my village. I'm thankful for other people who want to say they are Team Ferene. You know, and for each of you, when you think about you and your soul and your heart, who in your life are part of that team? They tend to it like a garden, giving it the water and rich soil and sunlight that it needs. They invite you to see what you might not be able to see because maybe there's blinders on. They help you weed out what doesn't need to exist there anymore. And with that weeding out of things that no longer need to be in your soul or in your mindset or in your spirit, it creates space and clarity for other things to surface. And the things that might surface might even be more harder topics that you have to figure out, but at least the things that just don't need to be in your queue can just take a seat to the side. We have to acknowledge as humans, there is only so much our brain and heart can do in a given moment. Once upon a time, I would thrive on the fact that I was so like amazing at multitasking. I'd be like, oh my gosh, look at me, I'm Superwoman. And I'm like, with this invisible cape that is just like allowing me to like do what I need to do for work and as a mother and as a friend and as a community member. Yeah, 22 Ferene says that is just that's just the narrative. No, thank you. I rebuke it. Because I know that that type of constant energy with no break or reprieve in that is what leads to burnout. And as I was sharing earlier about that OL training, following that training where I forced myself to exist in a level of energy that was so opposite to what I was feeling in my heart, and I forced myself to mask the feelings that I was really holding, not doing effective communication to my supervisor or to my direct team of grads working with me at that time. I pushed myself to a place where then I could not always make decisions or thoughts that were clearer in my interests. And for y'all out there, whether you're the person who's like, I'm burnt out, or whether you're the person, if you do some real deep reflection, you actually might be the cause of what's burning people out, or like the way that you run your said org or your said services. Something has to change. One of the reasons why, when I think about my mental health, one of the things that I think about is how many of us are continuing to show up each day and do jobs when we are deeply struggling inside. So we are there, we're behind counters, we are seeing patients, we're meeting with students, you're advising people still, you're like still writing articles, but yet you're struggling. I have to believe at some point that energy has to start to water down and could possibly do deep, profound harm to these places that you just keep showing up and doing business as usual. Doing business as usual is dangerous. It's the way that we approach racism. It's the way that we approach sex. Business as usual is dangerous. And I also just want to bring that to this conversation around mental health, because business as usual around mental health is dangerous. We are not moving and transforming fast enough with how people need us to truly put this topic at the forefront of so many conversations. I am transparent and I am so honest that there are times where I would tell myself, I wish that I could get diagnosed with some sickness, like I'd be at the doctor's, you sure I don't have anything? Or like it'd be easy to get injured, because at least if I was physically injured, people would have more compassion to why I'm not doing well. You tell someone you have cancer, you tell someone that, you've broken your knee, you tell someone that, you need a liver transplant. Oh my gosh, the care, the tenderness, the love, the understanding, the patience, it comes out in all types of ways. But how do we treat, receive, and hold people when it's like, I literally have a broken heart? Like when I have panic attacks, I literally get this throbbing pain in the core of my heart. Or when I lose people in my life that I wish we could still have the relationship that I wanted, I literally feel like my heart is broken. But people don't respect me saying, I'm feeling down, I'm feeling blue, I'm feeling depressed. It is so hard to get people to see and witness and understand. And I'm just simply naming some of the mental health things I navigate, let alone things like being bipolar, ADHD, learning the list goes on and on. And so for me, one of my things was always, how do I invite my staff or, my friends or who I am surrounding myself to just ensure that we are being as real as possible to the extent where you're comfortable and I'm comfortable sharing parts of myself. Because if we keep moving through this world very surfacey, not getting to the heart of what is holding us, yeah, we're going to go down on that ship. It's going to slowly take us down. And I'm sorry, I don't know about you, but I actually want to do this thing called life. There were moments in my past where I actually did question and wonder, would people notice if I was no longer here? You know, does my presence in this community, does my presence at this school, does it even matter? Because it just feels like people are going to just leave you out to bleed when you're like shouting things around anti-Blackness and racism and harm and mental, like, do you not care? I mean, it's so hard when you're like, I just want people to just desperately care and get loud and champion some of these things that are like holding us, right? And so I, again, love storytelling because that's what it does. We are all storytellers. I always say that. People are like, you're the storyteller. Yeah, but we're all storytellers. I am doing a practice that has been part of our, way of existing since the beginning of time. This oral way of tradition is something that has been passed down by the ancestors. And all I am doing is inviting us to slow down in a way and open up parts of ourselves to explore so that when people ask you, how are you? You could actually answer that question honestly. Because when my boss back in 2019 asked me in a supervision meeting, how are you? The way that I answered it, because of the sincerity and compassion in her voice, saved my life. It invited me to do some deep healing. It invited me to rest and stop in ways that I hadn't in a long time. It gifted me spaciousness to dabble in other things that could soar my heart and sustain it. Sometimes you can't change your work environment. Sometimes you can't change your family members. So then what are other things that are helping your heart and making that collective heartbeat happen? But she asking me that day, like, no, Ferene, really, how are you? My friend, Stacy Miller, and mentor, who saw me one day and was like, you're not okay. Those individuals that approach you with authenticity and vulnerability and a sense of care set you up to tell your story. And if more stories could come out, then maybe we could do a more collective accountability, tender hold, and healing, and take our responsibility and what it means to help us recognize and recover from burnout. Thank you.
Thank you, Ferene. I love me some Stacy Miller. And for those of you on the call, you may remember Stacy Miller was also a member of our board here at Howard Center. And, great mentorship and love and support goes an incredibly long way for all of us. And I'm super happy that she was there with you, for you, Ferene. I'm so super happy that we bumped into each other a week ago on Saturday in Burlington and got to meet in person with Stacy. So that was just such an extra bonus.
I know, it's like, she saved my life, literally, across from you.
Really nice, really nice. And I just want to say, just the sort of serendipitous nature of this world, right? When we are truly following our spirits and we're truly following our hearts, we wind up at the right place at the right time with the right people.
Yeah.
So I was just really delighted to just coincidentally meet you, since we're doing this today in this remote way, and just have a sense of your physical presence, which comes out very strongly even in this remote space. So thank you so very much, Ferene, for taking us to such a deep level. And really, it was so emotional, and as you said, very, very raw as well. And I loved your analogy. So let me go in reverse order with we've got 3 questions in the chat.
Yeah.
So I'm going to start with the first one that says, you mentioned chronic stress. So many people are asked to work long hours in stressful situations these days. Can you suggest ways people in those situations can find strength and ways to change that dynamic into something more healthy and sustainable and still feel like they're meeting the responsibilities of their jobs?
That one that's tough. Like, I mean, like, I literally left a whole field of work.
Mm,
I was like, I'm a lifer when it comes to higher ed. Like, but I had to eject myself. But not everybody can do that. And so this question is beautiful.
mhm,
And, there were at least 4 years where I just still kept doing the work. And I found ways, I remember inviting myself, right? Like, what are different ways that, my therapist and I, we called them Ferene deposits,
mhm,
and it was like, all right, Ferene, like, yeah, you can't always just get away for a vacation. You can't always maybe get that day off. And I remember doing an intentional exercise with myself about what are Ferene deposits? What are those things that either happen in 5 minutes, a half hour, whether it's over a course of a day, or yeah, it's something that if I could gift a week to that Ferene deposit, what could some of those things look like?
mhm,
And I listed those things. But it was more than just the list. I took action on them.
mhm,
It's like sometimes we forget. We can say it, we can write it somewhere, you can tell someone, but until you're like, this is my plan. And this is why I love my coach, Crystal. It's like, what's the vision with it? And I think that is because I came to the realization that this is actually on me. I'm the person who actually has the most responsibility in me, either staying in the suffering or like shifting it in some way. And so chronic stressors, I would feel that most in my back and in my neck.
mhm,
And for me, I started being intentional about using my benefits. I'm like, I pay money every month. I started seeing I started going to PT. I started going to therapy, right? Like, what are things that actually this job that's giving me this energy can
mhm,
like help me out with? And I think it's important for folks to assess some of those pieces because some of it's right there, but we don't talk about it because
mhm,
we don't want people to like use their time. And then I think also just the environments that you're in, there is a life beyond the job. And
mhm,
so I remember encouraging my staff, what brings your heart on fire in like get involved in the city, go get involved something that has nothing to do with this job, go eat with people that aren't these like. And I feel like we start to realize the world is actually more bigger than
mhm.
this little small vessel that these kind of work environments can make us think it's all about this job. And so
Right.
that level of awareness and opening and like what else is out there were some of the ways that I started to like make my way out of that space. And the things that set my house on fire, I held them so tight and I didn't let them go. Like when I
Mhm,
took that storytelling class,
mhm,
they weren't teaching me to heal me, but that's why I went to it.
yeah.
And it became my way of like committing to myself to feel and walk through this.
Yeah. Thank you very much. It makes me really think about as you were conversing and we're looking at this statement and the questions, we're talking about burnout and you really mentioned responsibility and accountability for self. And I think that's a major thing. But there's also a system, right? Because we have workplace environments and cultures, and we'll get there in a second. But I love, I was really brought to the notion as you were talking about like our bodies as temples, like how do we take care of ourselves and make sure that this for which we have the immediate responsibility, we're respecting so that it can sustain, right? I remember, yeah, I can't, yeah, I was just thinking there is some phrase that if you don't look after your body, you'll have no place to live. That's a phrase that came up.
And for some people in our world, literally, this is all they have. Like
Mm-hmm.
housing insecurity is insane right now, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I was like, listen, I'm sitting here so obsessed with this relationship and this relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Farene's been with me since day one.
Right.
One, like
Yeah,
hug her, love her, look in the mirror, tell
yeah,
her who she is. Like
yeah,
I have no shame in doing that anymore. My daughter will walk in. I'm just hyping myself up in the mirror. I'm
yeah.
writing notes all over things because it's
Mhm.
so easy for all of these systems and messages to dim us, to gaslight and it's like, man, if we don't know our truth, how can I even expect you to see my light or to
Yeah.
see my thing?
Yeah, 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 beautiful. If I take it to the organizational level, I think it's really important for our people here at Howard Center and our staff, and particularly those who are in, emergency situations and direct service, the levels of stress are very high. And I was just, when I saw you, Ferene, I was my first time back to Burlington in 2 years. I left in June 2020, and I literally felt like I was living in a pressure cooker. The whole environment just was, I could feel it, and it was just in the atmosphere, and it was in people's bodies and reactions. But I want to say that we have organizations, we have to also make sure our organizations are looking after people,
Yes.
and that we're not putting it on to us as individuals to be able to solve this. I personally, though I have a terminal degree, I would never have pursued a career in higher education for my own personal reasons, because I felt that it was one of those, you refer to it as using people, basically at their own expense. They're using people, eating them up and chewing them out. I remember once professors, I was having a review meeting of some of my work, and my panel said to my supervisor, and I was in the room, they said, "So does the victim understand what this is going to be about?" I was like, "The victim? I'm sitting here in this chair. You just called me the victim. I know you're an abuser," right? So we have to make sure in Howard Center that we don't have abusive environments at all. We can't do the best service if we don't feel well ourselves as the service providers and deliverers. So there's a massive opportunity for us to have an introspective cultural look at who we are, so that we can support people, and be true to our values. I'm very clear on that one. There is another piece that says, expectations, aren't they a killer?
Yes.
We are so afraid to not meet those expectations. Shouldn't we be proud of how far we've come and celebrate? Past doesn't have to define, does it? Life
Mm,
isn't life an adventure.
damn, that's a whole other workshop. It's the truth though. Like, I go back and I'm like, the expectations that I've been telling myself, everybody's been telling me, like, and once I'm like, that's not you, frame. Actually, that's not yours to hold. That,
Mhm.
like, yes. And or getting caught up in, just because it doesn't mean that that's how it has to be now.
Right.
Just because that's how my parents had to do whatever they had to do to bring me up, I don't need to necessarily repeat that way of existing with my kids.
Hmm.
There's a shiftment there. Like, I'm always like, yo, I love you, and I'm keep trying not to repeat childhood trauma. Like, this is me trying to do the work and not repeat the ancestral patterns that we don't need to.
Yeah.
But there's such a freedom when you were talking about that pressure cooker.
Mm.
Like, when you say that, that was me with all the things of how people are like, this is how you got to do it. And I'm like, I don't know, but like, me just being who I am and how I do this life, like, I'm telling you that this might be the way to, like, it's really, really hard,
Hmm.
especially when they're like, you don't got a choice. I mean, when
Hmm.
I got said VP saying, you go, or like, you don't have a job, what do you do in that moment? And
Right.
I feel that's where some people can use the power and the dynamic to manipulate us into doing constant energy
Yeah.
that is going to eventually burn us out.
Yeah. And there was something that you also said, you talked about how it's easier for you to write a letter to your partner, or just send a link to a YouTube clip of a song, or something. But actually getting to that level of elevation where we can say, right? Because like where things get stuck here,
Yeah.
and we're taking the expectations, we're taking the pressure, and it's getting overcooked. But how we can release the voice, right? The power that we have with our human voice. And I love that you're doing that with your storytelling. It was very powerful and moving. So thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah.
I love the point. I love how you point out that burnout impacts people differently. Have have your experiences helped you recognize burnout in others, even in those who may appear to be doing fine? Can you see through the veil?
Yeah.
Stacy
I
saw through
like,
the veil. Stacy's like, "Girl, you're not okay."
I know. I love those people. I call them with the third eye, Aaron Baker. Like, there's a bunch of them in my village that do that. I'm like, thank you very much. Um, I feel I notice burnout trends, obviously, in some of the identities that speak most to me. So I think some of the ones, like, even though I am no longer struggling with like newborn kid burnout or whatever it may be, if there's a mom in front of me, like, my spidey senses can remember, right? Like, I go back and I remind myself and I empathize of what was, even though that's not my narrative.
Mm,
And I try to say things
mm.
or share parts of my story that will invite them to realize you ain't in left field with what you're thinking. Like I love telling new, I'm like, you might look at that child and be like, I don't like you today. You're not a bad parent. Like like it's just right now I'm like, I've nursed all night. Like I don't even have a nipple. You ate it off. Like why would I be upset right now? You literally ate my nipple off. And so I think that's really like just kind of naming that. And how then I think it's reminding us we all are doing this thing called life. We have experiences, we have memories. And so if you see an individual or a group in front of you, there's possible power in freedom. You sharing a part of yourself could give something.
Yeah.
It was everything for my supervisor, Brenda Hounsel Sullivan, when I had my first kid, because we're, the nursing thing, I was struggling with the burnout of trying to ensure that I did nursing because everybody said breast is best, right? Like that expectation. And I remember her coming over to my home because I lived on campus, and she's like, right now, I am not your boss. I am a woman. I am a mother. And this stuff is hard, Ferene. And she like, I'm lifting up your shirt. Like, she's like, this is what you got to do. And she was like, listen, drink a beer a day. Like the baby likes it. And if it's a stout, it makes it chocolatey. And she's like, it's okay if you have to give the baby a little formula. If that gives you an hour of sleep, then get your hour of sleep, rest yourself up, drink your water. Like she just stripped it all down. And I think she wasn't in that narrative, but she remembered.
Mm-hmm.
So she could have just been like, that was my life, but not mine to hold.
Mm-hmm.
But her humanity saw mine. And I think her ability to possibly gift something that maybe she didn't get in that narrative, she gave it to me. And so when I moved to Vermont and I had my next job, I was so I took such agency in what I needed to nurse. I was like, this is what I need to do, blah, blah, blah. Brenda gave me that confidence to ensure I got what I needed.
That's nice. That's being kind to yourself, right? Because society doesn't stack itself in a way where we're supposed to be kind. You mentioned that it's not humane. We don't actually live in humane contexts very often. So it will fall to us to listen and watch and respond respectfully to ourselves first and foremost. Um, that's wonderful. Thank you. Doesn't everyone have their own load to carry? Isn't it hard to listen to someone else's crap? We sort of listen, I mean, but, talking about it as well. We need to question, don't we? Why do people believe so much what someone else tells them without knowing you? Is that gossip? I'm not too sure. I don't know how to read that question. But I
Well,
think, yeah, go ahead. I think the piece is,
it actually that line, I'm not sure how that person is interpreting it.
mm,
But for me, when I hear that, I think often, you know, some people tonight, because they saw me cry on this call, they're
yeah,
like, oh my gosh, I know Ferene's pain. Y'all
right,
don't know me, right? Like and I think, we can give even certain parts, but still at the core, we really don't know someone. I remember someone saying, tell me about my dreams. Tell me about what breaks my heart. Tell me about what my passions are. What makes me cry? What is motivating me to get out of bed each day? I think a lot of us walking around thinking we know the parts of our people that I think we just want to know.
yeah,
But, I think it's on us. And that's why I love community care and not just self-care. I hate the self-care because it's not just on me
yeah, yeah.
to do this collective work that I'm working through. It's also on the people that I'm inviting to be in my life. If you agree to co-sign, we do it together,
Mm,
and vice versa. I'm there to be your mirror. I'm there to hold up and reflect back to you. This is what I hear. This is what I see. Is
yeah,
this in alignment with what you're thinking?
yeah, yeah.
And that's all I can do for you.
Yeah, yeah. And it brings us to the notion of community. And I think when Dr. Chen joins us, we can expand upon this notion as well and how important it is to, recognize when we don't have it, but, how we can create it. Somebody's put in the chat, and I'll end here with this whole term of quiet quitting. And that's really that's part of what you're saying. It's easier to go down. It's easier to just drown and sleep underwater than it is to fight above. And I think we all have a real responsibility to support each other. And to not leave any one sailor out there floating on their own at sea, to make the best of a world. Thank you so much for your Titanic references as well. I will watch that film with a different lens on the next time.
I know. I was like talking to my kids the other day, and I was like, I'm sorry, Rose. There was enough room on that door for Jack. And I think some of us in life need to just move over, Rose. Like, I'm trying to like save my heart. I'm trying to pour into myself too, like let's like really be equitable about who needs what in this given moment.
Fantastic.
Thank you so much.
Bless you. Thank you so much. Thanks for being with us this evening.
Ferene, thank you for sharing your really wonderful personal journey. Really nice to have you with us. And for any viewers who may not have heard our introduction, we have a second speaker who's going to be joining us momentarily, Dr. Alice Chen, coming in from DC. And Dr. Chen and Jude Smith-Rakelly will have a conversation here with all of us. And then you are welcome again to put your questions in the Q&A throughout their talk, and they will leave some time at the end to answer some of those questions. So without further ado, it is my privilege to welcome Dr. Alice Chen. Dr. Chen is a board certified internal medicine physician and a national leader in physician advocacy, community organizing, and public health. After medical school and her residency, Dr. Chen became an internal medicine hospitalist and faculty member, first at UCLA and then at George Washington University in DC, training literally hundreds of residents and medical students as they cared for thousands of patients. In 2009, she helped found and ultimately became the executive director of Doctors for America, a grassroots organization of thousands of physicians and medical students who advocate for policies to improve the lives of their patients. In 2021, Dr. Chen became senior advisor to Made to Save, providing strategic and public health leadership to a national COVID-19 vaccine public outreach and equity campaign. She's spoken and written extensively on topics including healthcare reform, physician advocacy, climate change, our national COVID-19 response, and the importance of social connection. She serves on boards and advisory groups for several organizations focused on climate change, health equity, and grassroots organizing. Please join me in giving Dr. Chen a very warm welcome. Thanks for being here, and welcome back, Jude.
Thank you. Hello, Dr. Chen.
Hello.
Well, let's play and have a really great discussion from your vantage point about this notion of burnout. Before we launch into our chat, and folks, that's what we're going to do. We're going to have a good, I think, 35 minutes or so of a chat, and then we'll do Q&A. But Dr. Chen, tell us a little bit about, firstly, could you define burnout for our audience from your point of view? Let's start there.
Sure. So there are a lot of kind of scientific definitions of burnout. There are surveys and validated surveys you can take to define burnout. But I mean, I think Ferene did such a lovely job of defining burnout. Burnout is a feeling of exhaustion, physical exhaustion, mental exhaustion, emotional exhaustion, with regards to an aspect of your life. Usually we're talking about work, but it can also be parenting, it can be caregiving, it can be sort of something else in your life that is all encompassing. It is burnout is when you feel like you're not as creative as you were, when you're not as kind and generous as you were, when you have this fuse that is so short and you don't know who that person is. I think for every person, burnout is a little bit different, your own personal experience of it. I think most of us know it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, I used to take all these burnout quizzes. There was one particular burnout quiz I used to take probably once a month. And every time it would say, you're very, very burnt out. Like, okay.
You need to
very, very burnt out.
Yes, quiz. You keep reminding yourself.
But I knew I didn't need to take a quiz. I knew it.
Oh, that's fantastic. And it's the short fuse thing. Like, I will put my hand up. You said that when you have a short fuse and you don't recognize that person because maybe you're not as patient as you were. When my fuse gets short, I recognize myself very, very clearly. I was like, oh, no, that's me underneath, a not so nice person.
Totally. And it's not that, one day you have a short fuse. We all have those days. We all have those
Yeah.
moments.
Yeah.
It's when it's just it keeps going and going and going, and
Yeah.
you're not finding your way out of it. That's
Yeah.
burnout.
So what really motivated you to concentrate on this as an area of work as a physician?
Oh, wow. Burnout is such a huge topic within healthcare.
Mm.
So many people were very burnt out before the pandemic, and then the pandemic just took it all to an entire other level.
Mm.
I think my interest in it was very personal.
Mm.
I have always been a very positive, energetic, grab all the opportunities type of person. And I found myself, it's actually funny, Ferene was talking about 2017 as a moment for her. That was also the moment for me. Um, I found myself just not able to give the way I needed to.
Mm.
And and I felt so stuck.
Mm.
And it took me years to find my way back out of it. Um, Thinking about the difference between the person I am right now, um, and the person that I was, it felt like I was a shell of myself.
Mm.
And so I have a deep sort of interest in making sure, people who are not quite at burnout don't
Mhm.
get there, and that
Right.
people who are in burnout can come out of it,
Okay.
because being out is so much better than being in.
Yeah, yeah. And if you don't mind, I mean, I'd mentioned in my conversation with Ferene, like I had the sense of a pressure cooker when I was, back in on stateside. And I mean, what was it that was impacting you? Was it a professional thing? Is being a doctor? What was it that drove you to that place of realizing, okay, I don't have I've gone beyond my boundary here or beyond my limit?
So it's interesting. I mean, I was in a position where I actually had theoretically had a lot of control over
Mhm.
my professional life. And I was executive director of this organization that I co-founded and like shaped with my own bare hands.
Mm.
And I was friends with all of the people, and they were my people. And I was doctoring, and I love doctoring. I love being around my patients. Um, but I had spent many, many years giving more than I had,
Yeah.
and sacrificing the things that were really important to me that were not work,
Mm.
thinking, but the work is so important. I have to be there for the work. I can't go out to eat with my friends because the work is so important. I can't, I can't focus on my time with my family because this work is so important. There are people who are uninsured. There are people who are dying because they don't have healthcare. How dare I?
Yeah.
Um,
Mm.
and it got to a point where my cup was so empty, and yet I felt like this organization depended on me, that
Mm.
if I wasn't there, what would happen? And I felt like I needed to always keep thinking about how do I make it bigger and better and more sustainable, and it was all on me.
Mm.
And that combination of not feeding myself,
Mhm.
and feeling like I was never enough,
Right.
I think that was really what tipped it.
Yeah, thank you for that. Because it's like this whole piece of, there's a bit of a savior piece that's in there, like everybody's depending on me and I'm indispensable and the world's gonna fall apart if I go to the toilet, Or, so there's a real element of that.
Hmm.
There's that element, as you say, of not having the work-life balance, and it's superimposing upon ourselves the primacy of work over the primacy of life, right?
Exactly. Exactly. Especially when you're in kind of the mission driven work. You just
Yeah,
feel like it's my mission. This is my life. But you
right.
forget that everything else is your life also.
Yeah, yeah. Let's talk a little bit about life and, how sometimes we are so busy on the treadmill, so busy in the system of oppression and wanting to take from us, the, the organizations, we have to work hard to get work-life balance, and certain policies are in place. But let's talk a little bit about the difference between surviving and getting through a day and thriving, actually tapping into source, tapping into, and not usurping your energy, right? Because what you said was you put out more energy than you had to really give, right?
Hmm.
And that
Exactly.
moves us away from living and thriving to exhaustion. So, how do we keep that balance?
Yeah, I think one of the most important pieces is to realize that, especially for folks who are burnt out, that burnout is not what your life should be.
Mm,
Especially when you've been in it for a while and everyone around you is burnt out to some degree. I think
mm,
this is just as good as it gets.
mm,
Um, and I think it's so important for us to think about. I mean, I often sort of now I'm always thinking about what are the times when I am the most me, when I have been the most me, the most creative, the most energetic, the most sort of like jump up and go. How does that feel? How what am I doing? How do I walk? What do I wear? What do I eat?
mm.
Um, do I pick up the phone when a friend calls? If an opportunity comes knocking, do I answer that opportunity? If I met with a problem, is it a or is it I think I have some ideas. I think I can puzzle my way through this.
Yeah,
When I
yeah.
meet somebody who's in distress, can I wrap my arms around them or do I want to just run away?
Mm,
I think for all of us, we can think about those times in our lives when we have been thriving, and maybe it was momentary, maybe it was a year or a decade,
mm,
um, and kind of compare that with where you are when you are burned out.
mm.
I think this is not who I am.
Yeah,
That's who I am.
yeah. How do we get out of it? I mean, what would be some of those strategies of recovery, right? I mean, we can get better at recognizing it. Um, but what are the strategies?
So there the causes. There are so many different causes of burnout,
Mm,
and there are causes that are very much in our control, and there are causes that are not in our control at all, and there are ones that are in between where we think we don't have control, but we actually do.
okay.
Um, and I think, for me, it's easier to start with things that I can control. Um, so I think thinking about what are the things that make you you? What are
Mm,
the things that you need in your life, your day-to-day life, not your sort of like grand life, like I need a house or a car, but like what are the things like I need to be able to like talk to my mother, I need to read a book. What are the things that are so important to you?
mm,
Um, Especially what are the things that you've given up
yeah.
because you don't have the time or you don't have the energy anymore because you're burnt out
Or
because of the work.
because we're meant to be grown-ups, right? And grown-ups stop doing
Indeed.
certain,
You don't
I
dance, you don't sing.
when you say that, because it makes me think of some of the developmental programs I've done with people, and really getting them to tap into self, right? Like, who are you?
Mhm.
Not who does society wish you to be, who imposes upon you. But actually, I would often ask people, when you were a child, just by yourself, what did you do? Like, what did you play around with? What were you just naturally gravitating towards that gave you pleasure, that gave you joy? And I think that that is when we're in those intense states of detachment from ourselves or from others, or we're feeling that exhaustion, to me, one of those great strategies has been to go back to that source of self, right? Like the childlike, not childish, the childlike parts of us that are happy and safe and unadulterated, literally unadulterated. So that's something that we I think of when we share that. Um, what else? What are the thing? Okay, what do we do about the things we can't control then?
So, well, there is that kind of middle category of things that you think you
Okay.
can't control, but you actually can.
Yep.
Um, I when I was when I was working in the hospital, and I'd have kind of the slate of patients I needed to see, and I'm slow. I like to sit and like talk, and like I can't cut people off. They just talk, and I sit there and listen. And I'd find myself thinking, I don't have time. I can't eat lunch. I haven't seen all my patients yet. What if I run into a patient's family and they think that, wow, this doctor hasn't seen me today and she dares eat lunch? And so I just like, I know, right? Like that's how I was thinking. And I have to do these things, but I can't eat. And then I'd walk into a patient's room and they hadn't eaten their lunch. I think, how dare you not eat your hospital, not very tasty looking lunch? I'm hungry. Until there was one day I said, that's it. I'm going to see how long it takes me to run to the cafeteria, get some food, and eat it.
Right.
And you know what? It
Right.
took me 10 minutes.
minutes. 10 minutes.
I thought I couldn't take it was 10 minutes. Nobody cared. Nobody cared, but I thought they did.
You're
And so then I
watching.
started.
You're watching yourself, thinking that everybody's watching you. Dr. Chen, you sound a little bit paranoid there.
Yeah, don't we all think we're the center of the universe? Everybody's eyes. We're like, no, everybody's eyes are like in their own this.
And it doesn't really take much, right? We imagine things to be bigger than they are,
Exactly.
right? And that I
Exactly.
think contributes a lot to that sense of stress and burnout, an expectation that we talked about earlier too. Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's the middle bit. What's the end bit then?
So the end bit, I mean, so things that you feel like are out of your personal control.
Mm,
So there sometimes you can band together with other people. Say it's your work is demanding way too much of every person, or you don't nobody has any paid sick leave, or nobody has you're not getting the resources that you need to be able to do the work, or you don't have the authority. There sometimes you can band together with other people and demand that things change.
mm.
That's the community organizer in me speaking. That's a lot of work, especially when you're already burnt out, but sometimes you're so mad that you just do it. um Sometimes, I mean, I think it's important to figure out what are the things that you absolutely need to be different in order for you to do your work.
Yeah.
Um, and I think it's so important to be able to frame that in a like, I want to be able to do this work, but without this,
Mm,
I can't. It's not that
mm,
I'm just being needy and grabby. I
mm,
don't have this, I can't do this work.
mhm.
I can't be present. I can't show up for my patients or my customers, my clients. I can't show up in the way you want me to show up if I don't have, if I can't take my kid to the doctor when they're sick.
Right.
Um, so being able to kind of frame things. Sometimes it is culture change that needs to, change within an organization. If you have the power to sort of like help shift that, then you help shift the entire culture.
Mm,
Um, Sometimes you just have to get out.
yeah.
Um, and that's not easy. It's not always an option.
Mm,
I think it is an option more often than people think it is.
mhm.
But there are times when it isn't. And you have to decide, like, is it worth it to me to stay in this spot?
Yeah.
Um,
Mm.
or is it not?
Well, and is this spot really, suited for me? I mean, is it a job that's paying my bills and, making sure that I have, like we said, the roof over the head and food on a table? Is it serving me or am I serving it? And I think those are sometimes really, it's a tough question to ask sometimes because the way that our world is often set up, we tend to be serving things other than ourselves. And so that can come with some challenges that are there. Um, and you're right, sometimes if it's too much and we feel that systems aren't going to change, then we leave them. I know that I've certainly been in roles and jobs. I used to work for an organization. I had a lanyard around, and I had a whistle on the end of my lanyard. And people said, "Well, why have you got a whistle there?" It was with my little data stick and everything. And I said, "I just knew I was unhappy inside the place, and I knew it was wearing me down. It was chipping away at me, like what Ferene says, the paper cuts on your skin." And I was very mindful of the fact that that was the circumstance that I was in. And as far as the whistle went on my lanyard, I'd said to people, I know when to blow this whistle. I know when it becomes too much. I have to blow this whistle. And I just remember the day of breakdown at work when I was completely
Mm,
excluded from something and disrespected and benched, it's something that was so, what I thought integral to my being there. And I just, it's like, I just blew the whistle. I got to go now. This is completely untenable. It's just not going to work. And sometimes that's
totally.
hard, and sometimes that's a massive risk. It could be a career risk, it could be a financial risk. How can we manage that? Do you have any ideas on that?
I mean, I think you have to talk to people who are going to support you.
Hmm.
Um, I'm one of these people who always, if I see someone needs to get out, get there.
Listen, you would
Don't
probably let
worry.
me call you at 2 o'clock in the morning. Like, Jude, call me if you got a problem. But no, you also need to set your boundaries.
2 o'clock in the morning, I'm not talking to you.
Okay.
Unless you're in crisis, then I'll talk to you. I'll talk to you in a few hours. Although it's getting close to 2 in the morning where you are.
This is true. Yeah.
I mean, I think it's really important to think about sort of like what is the risk to you and to your career of being in a place where you are just shriveling day by day, where you're just becoming hollowed out and less of who you are and less able to accomplish and achieve the things you want to do in the world.
Mhm.
Um, it is really scary to give up something that is tangible,
Mhm.
um, especially when you feel like people are depending on you, um, and to walk away to who knows what.
Right.
Um,
Certainty.
Sometimes you have something lined up. I think a lot of times you need some space in order to figure out what that is. And so I think trying to picture sort of, okay, who am I going to be when I'm not so beaten down by where I am and what I'm doing right now? Who do I really want to be? And
Mhm.
how much better will that be for me, for my family, for my friends, for my community, for the world, if
Mhm.
I can do that instead of this?
Mhm.
Um, and it's not easy at all.
Yeah.
But it is, if that voice in your head is saying every day, this is not this is not the place for me, I think it's
Mhm.
pretty important to really take heed.
Yeah, yeah, I had, yeah, it's massively important. And it makes me think about what they've coined as the Great Resignation, which I technically don't think that it's a great resignation. We were going through a pandemic. Nobody dare quit a job because who knew what was going to happen, and then gradually, we got into these new patterns of working and existing, and kind of people got their work-life balance sorted a little bit more, right? Like less traveling, more times, whether you wish to or not, having more times with friends and family. Um, this sort of resignation happened I think there was accumulation over time of people that hadn't done it. But to what extent do you think it was driven by burnout or by hope?
Oh, interesting. I mean, I think both. Both. I think for different people, it was different.
Mm,
For some people, it was maybe they were burnt out before they found some balance, and now the office is saying, come back to commuting 2 hours each way. So, no, I'm not doing it anymore.
mm,
Um, for some people, it was the recognizing that they missed all the things. They missed having dinner with their family. They missed being able to, tuck in their kids at night. They missed being able to be with their partner on a Friday night and not be traveling.
mm,
Um, Other people didn't miss that, or other people said, "Get me back out there. I want to go back to the office. I want to get back on a plane. I want to do all those things." So I think that there was a real sort of realignment in what people want in their lives.
mm,
And for a lot of people, it was, no, I need the things that I need,
mm,
and the pandemic was so confusing and it was so disorienting, and I think a lot of us sort of during that time sort of figured out some of the things that were really, really important to us.
mm. Yeah, and I think whether people changed patterns, that whether they stayed or whether they resigned, it feels to me as though the prioritization around connection really increased, right? And that for some it was that physical connection with people at home and family. But then it was just the people that needed connection coming back into work. There are some people who just didn't want to stay at home
Definitely.
and they were really missing the human bond and communication and contact and the spontaneity and the creative conversations just passing by. So I think underlying all of it is this notion of support and human support and connection. What's that relationship to burnout in your eye?
I think there's a huge connection in two ways. One is when the work is causing you not to connect with people in your life,
Mm,
the people outside of work, your partner, your parents, your kids, your friends, whoever it is. We all need those connections. They
mm,
are absolutely vital to our existence. We were, until modern times, we lived with our tribe. We were born in our tribe. We grew up with our tribe. We lived with our tribe.
mm,
We were with our people all the
mm,
time.
mm,
And that's how we're sort of meant to be. Um, and so when we're disconnected from that because of the work, I think that can certainly contribute to burnout. And then I think within the work itself, when you're feeling isolated, when you're feeling at odds with people, when you don't feel like you're on a team that is really all moving in the same direction and for the same purpose, I think that can contribute a lot to burnout. Um, I think about in medicine, you think that everything, the healthcare system as a whole should all be geared toward having your patients be well.
Yeah.
And then, an insurance company says you can't have that medication for, no particular reason, that you just can't. Or, you're someone saying that you have to see patients every 10 minutes. You're seeing a patient every 15 minutes. You see a patient. My patient is suicidal. No, 15 minutes, go. The system doesn't feel like you're a team. When you're, so sometimes, when you're in a service position, there are people you serve who don't like you. They don't appreciate it. They're angry, whether they're angry at their spouse and they take it out on you or whatever reason. And it can feel like, I'm here for you, but you don't appreciate it. And so there's so many different ways that you can feel like I'm here on an island trying to save the world and the world doesn't want me to save it.
Yeah.
And so that can feel very, that isolation can definitely contribute to burnout. So I think it's incredibly important for organizations to think about how can we all be sort of aligned and work together toward a purpose and feel that way and feel like we're all here for one thing.
For one thing, and actually for one another, right? Because I have found, we're talking about being in values-driven organizations, and everybody has these, laudable ambitions to save the world or to help, feed the children, but it is not unusual for such organizations to be quite callous inside.
Yes.
And not care for each other as well as they might care for their customers or their clients or patients. Do you have any experience of that and any advice you could give on that score?
I definitely do. And I think a lot of it comes from that martyrdom mindset, where you just sort of where you are just giving so much that you think, well, I don't deserve to have a good life because these people are hungry or uneducated or don't have water or whatever reasons. And so then you start feeling like everybody, you just sit in the wrong headspace. When you start, when you're not all feeling like everyone deserves that same sort of like happiness and joy and thriving.
Yeah.
And an example I'll often talk about in kind of the going back to the hospital, the number of times that you have, you're on call at night, you finally get in bed, nurse pages you, patient hasn't peed in 6 hours. Like, I haven't drunk water all day. I haven't peed in 6 hours either. I don't care. That's not how a doctor should respond. But you haven't drunk water all day, like you are sort of like depriving yourself. So I think that we get it when we're not taking care of ourselves, then we become more callous towards other people as well.
Yeah.
And it is so important. I think people at the top have so much responsibility, because it's often the person at the top who is driving that sense that we're never enough, we're never doing enough, we always have to do more. And all these people are suffering, we need to do more. We're privileged, they're suffering, we need to do more. But it doesn't have to be that way. When I was working on this COVID vaccine campaign, that was an urgent campaign. Every shot that goes in an arm is potentially a life saved. And we're working in communities of color and folks who are, have traditionally sort of not trusted the system for so many good reasons. It was like really, really important work. But you know what? Our executive director over, summer or July, June, July said, okay, who has not taken their vacation yet?
Right.
We're giving you extra vacation days. Who have not taken it yet? Managers, make sure the people underneath you are everybody is taking their breaks. He made sure, has two young children and like blocked off evening time, like 3 hours in the evening. This is my evening time. We're not doing calls. I was like, oh, okay, I'm doing that too. so really sort of like not only giving permission, but like saying this is who we need to be able to rest. We need to be able to enjoy our lives in order to do the work. I think that has to come from the top.
Yeah, it is very much. There's a phrase, and I think it's a Chinese proverb that says the fish rots from the head. And it's really, it happens physically, and it's all about using it as an analogy of governance and leadership, right? So if it's rotten at the head, then it's just going to go down for the rest of the body. And that's why it is really important to model, balance, work-life balance and expectations. It makes me think a lot about, you talked about health equity and racial equity as well during the pandemic. So much has gone on recently with the murder of George Floyd, with commitments that organizations such as Howard Center have made to addressing systemic racism. And okay, we can have our data dashboards, but actually, and I'm not just saying for Howard Center, but it has been so clear to me that when we're talking about systemic racism, we're actually talking about systems of oppression, right? And when we look at some of those, the sense of urgency, perfectionism, quantity over quality, there are these different criteria, that make up a culture of oppression. And what has concerned me is that people think that only Black and brown people are oppressed by white supremacy, right? And realizing we're having a conversation today about burnout, which is the outcome of the very same system, bodies being used for the purposes of whatever productivity or serving clients, to the detriment of the body itself. And when that happens, irrespective of your race or anything, everybody's going to get burnt out. So we're
Indeed.
all in this ship together. I'm going back to the Titanic, we're all in this ship together. And, yeah, somebody from every criteria went down, right? It didn't matter. The sea will swallow anybody.
It will. And there are just too many spaces in our world right now where people are not treated as whole people.
Hmm.
As whole people we're mortal, we have limits, we have flaws, we have joys, we have things that we care about that are unique to us. Um, and if we don't allow people to flourish as who they are and we just see them as a commodity,
Hmm.
I mean, how could we not burn people out?
Hmm.
How can we not, be in a space where we're not treating each other the way that we should,
Hmm.
um, because we're just looking at each other in the wrong way.
Hmm. Yeah, there's something in there about how we fragment each other and ourselves. And fragmentation will definitely wear us down.
Absolutely, absolutely. We forget that everybody. I love the quote: "Everybody puts their pants on one leg at a time."
Mm.
We're just people. We're just all people.
We are, indeed, we are. Um, wow. How do we? You don't have to try and answer this question because it's a massive question. I think we've all been burnt by this pandemic, um, in ways that we don't even yet realize. I think we're still all a bit stunned. And we don't know what's coming next, right? So there's also this
Yeah.
fear of that next level of unknown. And I think some of us still have a lot of social anxieties that remain. Um, how can we move forward to get back to some element of normalcy? And nothing's going to be the same. I mean, the whole thing has changed. We don't even get how much has changed. But what kind of advice can you give us to walk through this uncertainty right now in ways that won't contribute to our sense of burnout and exhaustion?
Well, it is true that everything has changed. I mean, just thinking back to the beginning of the pandemic, all of a sudden every human was a potential threat or was
Mm.
a potential victim of you and your mistakes. Um, what a completely bizarre and just a strange way of looking at the world. Um, there's just so much that we went through, and not knowing if, who was going to get sick next, and whether people were going to be okay, not knowing whether you're going to see the people you love most ever again.
Mm.
um I think we're all trying to sort of just be back to normal, but all of that is still there, and we're still carrying a lot of it. I think that one of the things that I've tried to do more of is, people talk about gratitude a lot and the importance of sort of thinking about gratitude. Um, there's a concept that I got from Laurie Santos, who's a professor at Yale, and she teaches about joy and happiness, and it's the concept of savoring. So it's less sort of like gratitude journal at the end of the day. What am I grateful for? But it's sort of like in your moments, sort of savoring the moment, and being present and in whatever space it is. Instead of thinking, you're at Thanksgiving, instead of thinking, gosh, is there going to be another wave, and are we not going to have another Thanksgiving, or is some other thing going to happen? What is the next shoe? Eat your turkey, enjoy your uncle's bad jokes,
Right.
and soak that in, and grab the moments that are good. We spend so much of our lives distracted by our running to-do list. I do this a lot. Do. Great, I'm with the kids, but I really need to empty the dishwasher. Okay, I'm emptying the dishwasher. I'm trying to listen to podcasts, but I really need to be doing this. Oh, I need to be doing that. I need to be doing so many things. But then when I, you can't be in two places at the same time. I can't be emptying the dishwasher and reading a story at the same time. Sometimes I'll try, but it really doesn't work.
You need to stop that. I know, but it's a compulsion though, right? I mean, it's a compulsion.
It is. But, if we can be present, today is today. Tomorrow is something else. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, but I'm going to enjoy today and the things that are enjoyable about today. Sometimes I catch myself trying to savor something. I'm like, okay, I'm really irritated. I'm going to savor it. No. This moment I'm not savoring.
Yeah.
But there are plenty of moments that are worth savoring that I think we should do more of.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the slowing down, and I think Ferene had mentioned that a bit as well. We're always in such a rush, and our to-do lists are always so big, and we feel like we've got to get through so much in a day, and actually we just don't have to, we
We
can.
don't have to.
Mm-mm.
Exactly. And we can't. So if you can't get through it anyway, might as well enjoy watering your plants.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Let's dip in and see what we got in the chat. There are probably some things that are left over from the chat with Ferene. I'm gonna go in reverse. So science of well-being, Santos, you normalize multitasking superwoman. You normalize multitasking superwoman. So that means modeling from the top, not demanding 2,000 things, and not being a contradiction. Yeah, I think we just always have to keep ourselves in check, right? Like we'll have a compulsion to do something. But as you said, we're all kind of mortals here. And we have to catch ourselves, right? Especially if you're in the habit of doing something. Um,
Exactly. And we keep thinking sort of, when I get through these things, then I'll live my life. When I
mm,
get through the 50 things on my list, then I'll live my life. Oh, except now there are 60 things. Oh, now I got rid of those 60 things. There's 50 more things. Right? Like, today is part of your life. This moment is your life.
yeah,
And so live it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. There's a question here about workplace. When your organization promotes the culture that working hard is the norm, how can you positively influence your team or even workplace to value the concepts that you are offering?
This does depend a lot on sort of who you are in the organization and the culture of it. In some organizations, an intern has a lot of say, and some, they sort of get swatted away. And so it depends a lot. I think whatever is within your control, if you're in an organization, you have a team, and there are, two people or one person who reports to you, the two of you make it your culture that it's
Mm,
okay to, step out from work to do something that you need to do at home, that it's okay to have an off day and admit that and say, I'm just not here because
Yeah.
whatever, I got a phone call from my friend and something happened to them,
Yeah.
to create that space where you are.
Yeah.
I was speaking once with Donna Shalala, who was the Secretary of Health and Human Services under the Clinton administration,
Mhm.
and she said within her department, she said 6 o'clock is when the workday ends.
Mhm.
Go home, have dinner with your family. That's not how the White House worked. They
Mhm.
were up at all hours and doing all kinds of things. But she said, within the people who are in my control, I'm going to
Mhm.
make sure they have that space. So you
Mhm.
may not be able to influence the entire organization,
Mhm.
but influencing where you are, I think, is incredibly important.
Indeed. And working hard, it's interesting, like working long and working hard together to me don't fit, right? Like I can work hard in 2 hours and get like 6 hours of work done if I'm going at it, right? But I shouldn't have to be made to sit in my chair for another 4 hours because I finished 6 hours of work in two. Do you know what I mean? And because we have sometimes organizations where you got to punch the clock, you got to be the presenteeism, the long hours. And I think it's also just an HR issue. We have plenty of evidence, just in terms of health and well-being and productivity and how attractive an organization is to potential employees. People aren't going to come and work for organizations. Like we said, we've had people doing this mass exodus because they're like, I'm not putting up with it anymore. So employers, I think, just really have to make that determination. Do they want the kind of culture that's inclusive and attractive? You know, if they don't, then
And
they may not have the people they need to get the job done. So it may just hit from that point of view as well. Uh,
exactly. And it's not that you can't work long hours, and it's not that you can't have a team going all out for a month or maybe 2 months for some big thing that everyone's sort of working toward. But it can't be the day to day, every single day in the crisis
yeah.
culture that just wears on people and it doesn't feel true.
No, and that will just wear your immune system down as well as we go.
Indeed.
Someone's asking, what can I do when I am the one putting the too high expectations on myself?
Oh, that is a very, very familiar one.
Yeah, because I know you know this one. I know you know this one. And actually, I was thinking as you were talking to us, the sort of like I can't go and eat, or I need to help I'm not important because people are starving. I just had that moment where I can see kids sitting at a dinner table and like, I'm not going to eat those beans. And the parents going, the children starving in Africa, you must eat those beans. But it's like, but I don't like beans. So we get so used to eating beans because people are starving elsewhere and I feel guilty that. And so you put this expectation on and I'm rambling, but it was a funny thought. What do you think? How can we stop this?
So I think the best person for me is always my husband. You need to have people around you who will do a reality check. I mean, I can say like do a reality check on yourself, but it
Right.
can be really hard.
Yeah,
Most of us are not very good at that. If you're asking that question, you're not very good at it. And so, who can you talk to who will say, "Look, you can't write 6 books in a year. You're going crazy. It's not doable. You're one human being. Don't do it." You need people who will say that. I've had a couple of different professional coaches, and I feel like the number one thing they'll say to me is, "You're full of yourself. You're just full of it. You can't. You're not that important.
Mm, mm.
You,
I
you're
love
a
that you
human
say that.
being. Do
You
the
say that with
things
such a smile. You say it with such a smile.
you can." That's how they say it. I mean, it's not that you're unimportant. It's just we are so in our own heads. If I don't meet this deadline, if I don't hit that milestone, the world falls apart.
Mm,
The world
mm,
doesn't fall apart. None of us are actually indispensable,
yeah.
right? The president of the United States gets replaced every 4 to 8 years. Like
Mm,
none of us are irreplaceable. But but who you are in your life, your day to day with your family, with your people, that's
mm,
irreplaceable.
yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and so I think part of it is also thinking about what am I giving up in order to hit that deadline, in order to launch this thing at this time, in order to, serve this many people. What am I giving up? What is it costing me? And is
Yeah.
it costing me my ability to create change next year
Yeah.
and the year after?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I think all of those are important pieces.
There's something about pacing ourselves as well, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, and giving ourselves enough time and space. I mean, the expectations can still be high, and one can still be ambitious as well, if you have a lot of energy and thoughts and ideas. But to try and cram everything into 2 weeks, or, I mean, that's where the pressure cooker begins to take part. Um,
Totally.
so
Totally.
I think I think we will always have expectations of ourselves and of other people. Um, I think we should always be prepared to not have them be met. That's good too, right? But at least there's something to which we can, you know, measure ourselves against, so that we can keep
Exactly.
forward.
Yes.
Yeah,
And also to recognize that there is that phenomenon where you get 6 hours of work done in 2 hours because you're in the right space.
yeah,
Right? How many of us have had the experience of you have a problem, you cannot figure it out, you're busting your head against the wall, you go take a shower, oh, I figured it out.
it's
You
done.
turned off
Have
your
a nap.
brain for 5 minutes.
Exactly, and it's clear as day. It's as clear as day because we rest, right? You give your brain time to rest. Sleep is
Exactly.
really important. We haven't had one conversation about how important sleep is to mitigate burnout.
It is so important. It is so important. Sleep, eating, exercise, like just the very basic things of life are so important.
Drinking
Do you,
water
I
so
mean,
you make sure you go and pee. These are important things.
exactly. Exactly. So important. So easy to leave by the wayside, especially sleep.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm certainly guilty of it, but also like the days when I like didn't get enough sleep for usually very stupid reasons.
Hmm.
Next day, like, well, this is now I'm working at 60% capacity. Good job.
Yep.
That was that
I
didn't
can't believe
nope.
it took us an hour and 45 minutes to discuss sleep
It's
in a webinar
a
about burnout. I mean, come on, that's ridiculous, but we got there.
Indeed, indeed.
Yeah.
I mean, I think those physical things, um, you know, exercise didn't matter to me so much when I was in my 20s or even my 30s. But now, if I don't get some exercise, my back hurts and my like knees hurt, and I think, well, I don't want to be hobbling around when I'm 60 or 70. I want to be running around, work, doing my work in the world. I need to take care of me.
Take care.
Um, so
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. There's one comment in here, question. We're going back to this notion of quiet quitting, which I
Mm.
really like. I've actually had loud quitting myself in certain instances. That's in the context of a job, right? I mean, um, but in the context of doing minimal amount of work and not doing anything extra, right? That's just doing the bare minimum. And I think that this is such a great and important point because that's one way that we look after ourselves when we're in jobs that are wearing us down, that we're going to do enough to get by and not get on some kind of performance review. I'm going to meet my bare minimum standards, but I'm not going the extra mile. I'm not actually really jazzed up by the work. I'm not being innovative. I'm not taking calculated risks to make improvements. I'm just humming along. It can be a little bit of a dull hum, but nonetheless, it's a hum. Um, Quiet quitting isn't always throwing in the towel, right? Somebody's saying, but is quiet quitting actually giving up, or is it asserting boundaries between work and life?
I think this depends so much on the flavor of quiet quitting.
Hmm.
There's the quiet quitting that is the kind of the I love this work, but I'm burnt out. And I'm just gonna shrivel up and sort of like step back and back away. And I hate it. I hate just dialing it in, but I don't have it. I don't have the energy to do the thing that I know is who I am. I always I jazz it up, but I can't. That's
Hmm.
one type of quiet quitting.
Hmm.
There's another quiet quitting of like, this job is just a job.
Right.
It pays my bills
Hmm.
and I want to be home at 5 o'clock so I can cook dinner.
Yep.
And that's that and I'm not going to, make my PowerPoint extra pretty
Yep.
because that means I don't get to do the things I want to do in my life. I think those are very, very different things. And so I think sometimes, quiet quitting is such a blanket term. But
Hmm.
it's just like the great resignation. Like every single person had a story. and
Yeah.
they're different,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I like it, and I think for when we're in the situation where we are drawing those boundaries and creating work-life balance for ourselves. I mean, okay, I own my own company. I can set greater boundaries. Many of you probably know, like my email signature is I don't work for. I'm just not going to work on a Friday because I work too hard Monday to Thursday. I can't do Fridays too, right? So there are boundaries that we have to set, and that's not quitting, right? Like that's just a boundary. That's not a resignation. It's not underperformance. It's just like I'm not doing this now. You know?
Totally. And
Um,
it's actually allowing you to show up
right.
on Monday.
Yeah.
If you showed up on Friday, on Monday you'd be kind of, ugh, here I
Exactly.
am.
Exactly. Nice, nice. Another question's coming in that says, in your experiences, what were some early signs that you were recovering from burnout? How long did it take for you to feel that you were back?
Oh, it took me 3 years to
Ooh,
get back.
wow.
I was really in a in a burnout hole. But the recovery started like very quickly. One of
Mm.
the things that I did was getting rid of this thing.
What is that? What was
My
that?
phone. My
Oh,
phone.
okay.
Um,
Mm.
I'd say, okay, I'm not gonna touch my phone. But you know what I had to do? I actually had to throw it out of arm's reach.
I thought you were gonna
And then
say
I
you
feel
threw it
like
out the window.
I'd throw it out of arm because when sometimes when you're in this like work sort of like everybody wants a piece of me, then like you
Mm,
pick up your phone for no reason and you're like, I need to be doing something on this thing. I don't know what, but I need to be doing something, answering an email or I need to be looking at a tweet. I don't know why, but I need to be looking at something.
mm,
Um, and sort of putting that away and allowing my sort of brain to just having that white space. I remember there was a moment, and this was like probably like a week or two in. It wasn't even that far in. I was standing waiting for the metro, and I was just standing there, and I had a thought, like a novel thought, popped into my head. I thought, huh, that hasn't happened to me in
wow.
gosh, it feels strange, but very nice.
Yeah.
Um, I was like, oh, I used to be a person who had thoughts that were
Mm,
interesting, just observations about the world, not like grandiose,
mhm,
something to be published, but um, I there's just little pieces of me that started to come back.
yeah.
Um, I've always been a journaler for
Hmm.
my whole life. I have like journals from when I was like 10, when I was like just a goofy 10-year-old. And there was a whole period of years where I stopped journaling because I just didn't have
Mm, mm,
I didn't have it anymore.
yeah.
And when I picked up my pen and was able to like sort of write to
Yeah.
myself again, like,
Yeah.
okay, that's a piece of it.
It's nice.
Um, when I played music all growing up through college and medical school and residency, and then got into this advocacy world of saving the world, and I dropped it and I forgot about it. Um, when I started bringing that back, when I felt like, okay, I want to do that again, I want
Mm,
that back in my life. When I was able to reach out to friends again and feel like I wanted, when I was like sort of starting to organizing, when I was just starting to feel like me again.
mhm.
Um, that's it came in like little bits and pieces.
Yeah.
Um, and for me, part of what I felt when I was so burnt out was that I couldn't care about the vast majority of things in my life anymore. I just couldn't get up the caring, which was just so different from who I was. I had two young kids in my period of recovering from burnout, which is an odd way to recover from burnout because most people have young children and it burns them out. And some of that happened to me as well. But I rediscovered how to be all in on
No,
something, and that
no.
was my kids.
Oh, that's
And it was like not an option, but they taught me how to be just completely all in, all there.
yeah.
Mama's here.
Yeah.
And that was part of what helped me recover too.
Oh, that's really sweet. That's a really sweet thing. And like you said, it's actually quite gradual, you know. It's gradual getting into it, and it's just gradual coming out of it as well, right? And then when you
Hmm.
have those pop realizations going, ah, oh yeah, I remember. Ah, it's
Yeah. I thought it would
right.
take me a summer. I thought it
No,
would be 3 months. I'd be back.
no, no. That's what I said. It's time and it's space, and, you know, like bereavement and grief. You know, I'll always say that having leave for bereavement is not a day or two off. Like you're not gonna
I
go through the
know.
process in 2 days. It's like you've lost something. It takes some time to readjust. If ever we get to readjust, it's a process, not a day or two off as we go. And
Mhm.
it's the same thing as we recover from burnout. It's not immediate. You don't flick a switch one day and it's over. Um,
Exactly.
I mean, we're in a COVID moment. And I remember when I got COVID, and you just think, God, is this thing ever going to go away? Will this brain fog disappear? And then one day you realize, oh wait, I haven't felt funny for about five. Oh, am I normal again? It's just gradual. It's just gradual. Okay, what else have we got in here? We've got just 2 or 3 more minutes. Let's see what we have on our list. Thank you everybody for putting questions in the chat. What is this? Is there something to say for doing a job you don't care about so that you can have the energy to care about other things that matter more? I think we've kind of mentioned that with regards to put it to your kids or put it to your art or put it to writing journals or books and things of that nature. Compassion for
Definitely.
yourself, investing in who we are, right? Like we have to invest in ourselves. And also have people around us, as you said, your husband, your partner, he's there to support you and invest in you to help you keep your brakes on and maintain that balance as well. My husband is
Exactly.
always sitting in the background. I don't know if you know Columbo. There was always Mrs. Columbo in that series. You never saw Mrs. Columbo. My husband's like, my husband, Mr. Kelly, is always here making sure um, let's see. Let's do one more. Where can I grab this from? Thank you. There's so much in the chat, and I apologize if I can't get to your specific question. Um, but I'm just seeing where, because some of them we've touched on already. Um, yeah, we talked about recognizing personal limits, self-accountability. Yeah, I don't think that there's much more that we haven't done. Um, yeah, someone's just saying recently recovering from being totally burnt out on a job that they liked but was just too overwhelming and missed themselves. So this person retired while they were still young enough to live life and enjoyed living life. And I think that's a really important piece. You and I, Dr. Chen, we talked a lot about joy and how important it is to be in that joyous space, of not going burnt out. I actually, joy is so important, and it's one of the strategies that I've developed for myself, right? I have what I call a joy barometer. It's an internal barometer that I've developed over time so that when some information comes my way or an opportunity or a job or something, I just have to sit quietly and I have to imagine, is that going to bring me joy or not? And I let my internal barometer do its work. And if it doesn't go up in the positive direction, the boundary comes in and I'm like, sorry, not doing it, not interested. Because we have only time, as far as I'm concerned, for the joy. So I actually have my, yeah, joy is it. How do you find your joy, and how can you suggest to others that they maintain theirs as well?
So I think that there's joy that just presents it to anything. This project is joy, and there are things in your life that you just have to do that may not
Mm.
necessarily sort of at face value seem like they're joyful, but there are things that we can do sometimes. Just shift things a little bit and make it a little more joyful. Like the drive to and from school. When I have the kids in the car, it's wonderful. When they're not in the car, I'm just driving in traffic. It's not that wonderful. But I started listening to these podcasts that I like, and so now I actually kind of look forward to it. Maybe it's having like a beverage that you like, and having that hot cup of tea or whatever. Um, having music on that you enjoy listening to while you're doing something that's a little bit drudgery. Maybe it's sometimes I get sort of tired of like having to cook dinner. Well, I like to learn, and so let me just like go on like an app and find some recipe, and I'm learning something. So I'm not just cooking dinner yet again. I learned something today. So it's like, what are the things that you can do to sort of modulate the things that you have to do to make it more joyful?
Excellent. Thank you so much. Lovely to end on that note. It's been a pleasure having a chat with you this afternoon. Thanks for coming to Howard Center. We hope that you come again at some point in time. I'm going to love you and leave you and hand back over to Denise.
Dr. Jude Smith-McKelly, always such a pleasure. Thank you for being with us, and I hope you get a good night's sleep. Dr. Chen, really, really nice to host you here in Vermont. Thanks for being with us. Thanks to Ferene. Appreciate you being with us and your wonderful story tonight, and also to our interpreters. Thank you. Just a couple of closing announcements. We will be sending out a feedback survey, and we'd really appreciate hearing from you. So if you could take a few minutes to complete that, that would be so helpful. CEU certificates, if you need them, just email Rob Vale, rvale@howardcenter.org in the next couple of days. And as soon as it's complete, we'll get those out to you. And as always, mental health resources are available at howardcenter.org. Our numbers are on the screen and always online at howardcenter.org. So thank you very much. Please take good care. Find your joy. Good night.